So today we're going to install my line lock. So pretty much all I'm going to need today is going to be these three right here and this one. But oh, and this. I just wanted to show you some of the tools that you can use to bend line. I have found that this one's actually the best one for really small line and tight bends. These not so much. It all depends on what kind of tube you're bending. If you're bending anything like this NICOP line, actually none of them are any good because that line is so soft it tends to kink. And steel line and the stainless line bend the best with any of these. So like you saw in an episode before, I had already placed the solenoid, and I have to apologize for the wind noise. So as you had seen before, I have already placed this here, and pretty much what's going to happen now is that I might even reuse this, I'm not sure, but I'm going to make this an AN fitting. I'm going to make this line from here to here, and then another line from here back down there. Hardest part here is to get it to look symmetrical and nice. So now the easiest way to do this would be to make some templates. It just so happens I ran out of spare tubing. I usually like to use this, but I don't have any more. So pretty much it's got an idea of the lengths. So what I'm going to end up doing here is making the flare, putting the fitting on, and then bending it, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to get it on the flaring tool. So before I start with that, I'm going to make sure that this is deburred completely. I don't know if you can see here, but that has a sharp edge in the center, and I'm going to kind of bevel it a little bit with this. There you go. There you go. Now it's all beveled nice and smooth. You can also use a small file to knock off any high spots you saw that come off right there. Yeah, there you go. Nice and round, doesn't catch on the skin. This is the flaring tool I like to use. I used to mess around with those $30 tools that you see. That is like it's got a chuck and then flaring head. And the issue I always ran out with those is that they never gripped the tube right. They ended up marring this area right next to right where this would clamp. And then I found this tool, and I'm tell you right now, I swear by it, because it gives me perfect flares every single time. And it's so easy to use as well. So once you lock it in there, you use this to center it. That centers this. As you can see, it has the little spots to center it. And once that's tight, you go down with this. And this thing is, forget what it's called. It's not centric, so pretty much it shapes it as it goes down. And the other thing is that it stops once the flare is done, so you can't overdo it. And there you go. You see, now I can't tighten it anymore. Now I loosen it. And we're going to have a perfect flare. And here you can see it doesn't leave any marks. And check that flare out. Doesn't leave any marks. So now check this flare. Perfect. So put your AN collet or whatever this thing is called. As you can see, I'm spinning the tube right now. It's kind of hard to see, but I'm spinning the tube, and you can see how it rides perfect and true. And just like I said, this is the tool you want to get to make AN fittings up to 3/4 of an inch. So then this, and now what I was saying now is that here I'm going to use this right up against the fitting to get my bend. So make sure that it doesn't go any further. Tighten up right against it and bend. Bam. So this is going to be my tight side. And here's the funny thing, the other one's going to be like right about there. So yeah, that's one side done. Now I got to start with the other one. I'm back out on the car, and now before I had the solenoid on this stud over here, and figured out that I cannot make a band tight enough to connect from this side to that side because this tip would be right over here. So what I ended up doing is moving it a little further back, so when this one's on the fitting over here, they line up. So because like I said, this is the tightest bend I can make, so that still leaves me with these little tubes being long enough to connect to that side and this side. So yeah, so the way that this works is this is the front side, and actually, and I know it's the front side because it says front in right here, and this is rear in, and then you have the front out. There's 2 front outs, 1 rear out. So this one gets split to both sides of the front, and then this one goes straight to the rear. So my next step is going to be to take this line out, put the fittings on, and continue on bending and flaring until it's finished. So I'm putting a rag down here to catch any fluid that drips, because as you're probably aware, brake fluid just eats through everything. So here we go. Yep. That's some Willwood precision for you. That thing is a snug fit. So these are the fittings that I'm going to use. This is pretty much an adapter, and it has a flare end on one side, and then the thread size for that fitting, I can't recall what size they are right off the top of my head, but I'll put the part numbers in the description. Now you gotta keep in mind, these are aluminum and these are stainless, so just get them tight, but not too don't go cranking on them too much, because they will definitely strip out that aluminum. There we go. Now I have a good idea of where to cut this. It's going to be right there. So this is my mark. I'm going to put a little line with the marker, go double check it, and then continue on. So went double check, cut it a little longer, and then I'm gonna make sure that it's right up against that tip, and then I'll flare it. You see how that tip overlaps a little bit? That's gonna be where the flare goes. So this is gonna fit perfect. So anyways, my piece is looking really professionally made, and yeah, we're gonna see this. So flare 1, flare 2, it's a little off, but I can work that out of the bend. So pretty much just the goal here is to make sure that the flares sit flush on their own. And so here we go, flare 1 and flare 2, and as you can see, so so that's one line, one more to go. So anyways, now I'm starting the other line. Just like before, I'm going to fast forward through all of this, but I just want to make sure that the video is somewhat complete. You're pretty much just breaking in the front line and putting a solenoid in between. With AN fittings, your main thing is to make sure that those flares are perfect and they have no burrs. Again, like I mentioned before, having the right tool just makes this so much easier. Now, something that I didn't mention before, when you bend these, give yourself a little bit more than a 90. I'm talking about a couple of degrees. You can probably barely see it on there. But that gives you wiggle room when you're trying to put these on. So now that I'm back out here, I'm gonna do the same thing. Just this time, I wanna make sure that I get my lines just right. And I gotta kind of debate where I wanna put that bend for this. So pretty much straight up and an angle. So the angle is gonna be right about here. And just to make sure, right here. So that at that point needs to go down. So I get a straight up and down. A little more. Just a hair more. Bam. And right there. Now I need to mark where I'm gonna make my cut, and that's it at the end of the black mark. So anyways, put the flare on it, put the fitting on it and everything. Now flare 1, flare 2, and once again we have the same deal as before where the flares rest just fine against the fitting. So now I can just start screwing them in. So now that everything is buttoned up, next thing I need to do is wire the switch, which one side of this is going to go to ground and the other side is going to go to a temporary switch inside the cab with 12 bolts. In my case, I'm going to have to run the ground either to the fender, or I might be able to get a ground out of the bracket. I'm not 100% sure. This is all connected to the cab, but the fender itself is plastic. So we'll see. I'll check it with a multimeter. If the ground here is not good enough, then I'll just, like I said, just wire to the fender. Otherwise, don't forget to bleed your brakes. You're gonna have to bleed your brakes because all of this is full of air right now. And that pretty much concludes the line lock install. Pretty straightforward. Literally all you're doing is cutting off the flow to the front brakes, and when you activate this, it holds the pressure beyond this point, so all of this side stays pressurized. And with that, we're going to end this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please subscribe and make sure you share this with anybody that may find it useful.